Hello, and welcome back to Hunter Tuned. I'm going to be finishing up the GSR motor today and see how far we can get. I actually already installed the oil pan, or not the oil pan, the oil pump and the rear main seal onto the engine. And in the live stream I did last night, I was actually talking about how I did get the bottom end back together, and we did do the bearing trick, and we're going to see if it works. So anyways, I'm moving on here, and I figured I would show you guys kind of how I seal Honda oil pans, because they can be a little bit tricky to get to seal properly. But I did actually find out that Speedfactory Racing sells this updated Felpro gasket. So this is a standard like Honda Felpro oil pan gasket, but it has like metal rigidity to it, so it has this like metal layer to it, so it's very rigid, and it's not just like a like a flimsy rubber like the ones you can buy at AutoZone and stuff like that. So I'm gonna throw this gasket on, and the kit actually comes with a little tube of RTV, and it also comes with these I don't even know what the hell these things are called. They're like a snap up. They're little things that you thread into the block on like each corner, and then you snap the gasket over it and then install the pan and then remove these things. I don't know. I don't think they're really necessary. But anyways, I got the RTV kind of thinly spread out all along the block. Here, I got my windage tray and pickup tube on already, and then I also did put a little bit of RTV around the pan, just a thin layer. The little tube they give you is actually perfect. Like, it's the perfect amount to do the block and the oil pan. So I'm going to go ahead and lay the gasket down onto the block here. Make sure she pushes down into all the spots where it needs to be. That snap up thing might be a good idea if like your block or whatever doesn't have studs in it to kind of align everything. I think that might be what those are for. But I don't think it's really necessary, considering a Honda block has like half studs and half bolts for the oil pan. But anyways, now that that is on there, I'm going to grab the pan, and I'm going to throw the pan on, and then I'm going to tighten it up. Son of a bitch. Well, that pan doesn't actually fit because that pan is off of my B20, and the B20 pan is different than the GSR because the GSR windage tray comes up a little bit higher. So that pan's not going to work. I got to see if I have a GSR pan laying upstairs, and then if I do, I'll have to throw that on, but I'll pick back up when I figure out if I have a pan or not. Otherwise, I think we could probably just swap the windage tray to the B20 one, and I think we'll be all right, but I'm going to find out here in a minute. All right, guys, so I did find a GSR oil pan actually laying upstairs. So I threw the GSR oil pan onto the motor, and everything fits good now. I got that oil pan gasket on, and that oil pan gasket, guys, is freaking sweet. I would gladly buy another one of these oil pan gaskets just because you can reef the oil pan bolts. Like, you can tighten the shit out of the oil pan bolts, and the thing does not push out, and it sits into the pan very nicely. It doesn't push out anywhere, like I said, and normally if you like over torque the bolts on an oil pan for a Honda, the gasket will push out and it'll leak. You have to torque them like to fucking 10 foot-pounds or something really light. But with this gasket, you can actually reef down on the bolts to squish down on the gasket, and everything's working really good with this gasket. So like I said, I'd highly recommend it. And yeah, so anyways, I'm moving on. I got a few of the other things on. I actually put the water pump on, the tensioner, the crank gear, and the head studs into the block. And then I laid down my head gasket. I cleaned the surface off really good. And I put the OEM head gasket on here. So this is a subscriber actually sent me this head gasket. He just said pay shipping, and he sent it over. So thank you very much, dude. We got the OEM head gasket installed, making sure that the up is up, and yeah, so now I'm just cleaning out the cylinder head. I took my air gun to it and I blew out all the passages to make sure everything was clean, and I'm wiping it down, making sure there's no junk on the surface, because when you do a head to block surface, you want to make sure that it's like mirror finish, very clean, not a lot of dirt or debris on the surface. You want to make sure it's nice and clean. So I got the head cleaned off, blown out, and now I'm going to be putting it onto the motor. So I'm going to put that thing onto the engine and then torque the bolts down. I usually go like 40 foot-pounds and then like 80 or 85, depending on how risky I'm feeling with these ARPs. I know you're supposed to do 3 steps, but I don't really think it's needed. So I just go like 40 and then 80 or whatever. So yeah, once the head's on, I'm going to chuck the timing belt on and the cams and put the head all together. And then I still need to get an intake manifold gasket. I don't have one of those currently, so I have to get one of those, but I also have to figure out what I'm going to do on the back of the block. I got to get my catch can fittings put into the block here. I got to plug this guy off, and I got to plug this guy off. So this guy right here is for the stock PCV catch can, and on a GSR, when you run the catch can fittings, you know, on the block here where they're threaded, you got to plug that bottom port off. So I got to find a plug. I thought I had one laying here, but I might have used it on a different setup. So there's that. I might just go get like a freeze plug for it, because I think I could probably just go find a freeze plug at AutoZone or something like that and jam it in there with some JB Weld or something just to kind of plug that hole off. Otherwise, worst case scenario for now, I'll just run the black box still hooked up, and then later I can put my catch can fittings on, but we'll see. I also have to delete the this pipe right here, because this is for the GSR oil cooler, which I will not be running. I got to get a stud inserted into this guy, so I'm going to try to extract the stud out of this block and put that stud into here so we can do that. And yeah, so I'm going to quit jibber jabbering. I'm going to throw the cylinder head on and pick up in a little while. Alright guys, so I got a couple more updates for you now. Haven't really turned the camera on a whole lot, honestly. I've just been kind of plugging away at this thing and fixing some loose ends on it. But I do have the motor pretty much fully assembled now, and I have the turbo kit kind of hanging off the front of it, because the oil pan that I put on, that GSR oil pan, it already had a -10 bung welded onto it, but it's at a different spot on the pan. So like my drain line was over to the right a little bit more, and this one is more towards the center of the pan. Which actually works out pretty good, because I've had some issues with this turbo kit where the return line would start kinking, or it would just not route how I wanted it to. And actually, the way that this is set up with the bung over to the left a little bit more, if I use 2 -10 45s, so I got a 45 coming out of the pan right here, and then I also have a 45 coming off of the turbo. This way I can run my return line pretty much just like this, which will work perfectly. It won't touch the manifold at all, and I won't have to worry about it kinking, because it's a pretty much straight shot. So that's pretty awesome. That's the only thing with this eBay turbo manifold that I had a little bit of issue with, was running the return line so it wouldn't kink and it wouldn't be resting on the manifold or the intercooler piping. So this should work out really good. I'm actually super stoked about that. I gotta get my bolts, obviously, to bolt the turbo down, but I don't really want to do any of that right now anyways, because I don't put the motor in with all this attached. I just wanted to kind of mock some stuff up and see where that return line was gonna go. And I also fixed, so this is a eBay 44mm wastegate. The one I run on like every frickin' turbo build I put on. And sometimes these wastegates, they have some issues with the, there's like little set screws inside of it that hold the valve onto the diaphragm. And sometimes they get loose. And mine actually did, one of the grub screws backed out, and the valve inside of there was loose. It still worked, but that's obviously not a good thing. You don't want your you know, the valve and the diaphragm to be loose. So I took the wastegate completely apart and I tightened all the grub screws back up and I tightened everything back up. And it's all working good now. I Loctited them. And that's one thing with the eBay gates, if you're like super scared about running one. This one lasted for quite a while before it give me any issues like this. But if you are concerned about it, just when it's brand new out of the box, just take Loctite and Loctite all the little grub screws that are inside the wastegate. And then the only other complaint with these gates is the clamps that clamp onto the like the V-band clamps or whatever. Sometimes they're good. Sometimes they work out perfectly fine. But this thing, I don't know if you guys can see, but it's black around the perimeter of the V-band here because this was actually leaking the whole time I had it on the car. It was leaking exhaust out of there. And I didn't really care because it was whatever, but literally, like, I didn't tell anybody this, but my gate would literally just flop around. Like, it was not tight at all because this clamp was, it just didn't have the right pinch to it. You know what I mean? Like, it pinches the two clamps together, or the two flanges, it kind of pinches them together. So what I did is I actually fixed this issue. Now, this thing literally is rock solid. It's not going anywhere anymore, so I'm super stoked about that. These clamps, they sometimes you gotta grind because they'll clamp all the way down, but like the clamp will be butted up together and you can't tighten it anymore. So sometimes just grinding the edge of the clamp here to get some more room to squeeze it together works out. But in this case, it wasn't even enough for this wastegate. That wasn't the issue. So the issue was the side bite on the flanges here. I actually took the clamp right off, and I took the clamp and I pinched it in the vise, and I bent the metal in so it like had more pinch to it. If that makes any sense, guys. So I did that, and now the wastegate and the clamp and everything works really good. So that's awesome. I'd rather do stuff like this, honestly, guys, for $40 wastegate. And deal with the little issues. You know, just make sure you have boost cut set in case your wastegate goes all haywire. But shit, man, if a $40 wastegate can last me a year, I'll buy 100 of them before I buy a tile. Just because I'm a cheap ass, and it's not that I don't like, you know, respect American made products and stuff, but a lot of these products and stuff aren't even made here. The companies are just made here. But anyways, like, a tile gate is super nice, but they're fucking so expensive. Like, they're so expensive. It's really hard to get myself to buy one. I mean, you could buy like fucking 7 or 8 of these wastegates before you bought one tile. So that's just my theory on the wastegate thing. Yeah, you might have some issues with them, but fuck, at the end of the day, you could buy 100 of them before you buy one good, you know, brand name or whatever. But this gate works out really good. Like I said, the one on my truck's fine. The one on my Mustang's been on there since day one. I haven't touched it, and it works just fine. So yeah, I like them. But anyways, I'm gonna get the turbo bolted down. I got the valve cover kind of just sitting on here. I got the whole head assembled. The timing is on. I got everything timed. The alternator's on. The crank pulley is on. But I'm fucking pissed because I put everything together and I forgot this damn timing belt washer. So I might have to rip this thing back apart and put the timing belt washer back in here, because if you don't have both the washers in there, sometimes the belt can walk, and if you get timing belt walk, it can wear on the valve cover or wear into the timing cover or anything like that. So I might have to do that, but the inside one is on. It's just the outside one that I forgot. Yeah, so I'm gonna have to take this thing apart and do that too. But yeah, that's pretty much it. I also have to get a freeze plug for back here. Oh, another thing I did is I took let me fucking tilt this thing up. So another thing that I did is I actually took the stud out of that block that's over there. I took 2 of these jam nuts. I don't know exactly what thread pitch these are, but you just get the 2 thread pitches that are the same size as the stud on the oil filter, and then you tighten them together, and then you can back the studs out. So I backed the stud out, and this is going to be pretty much like a B20 setup, or like an LS setup. It's not going to run the oil cooler or any of that stuff. I blocked off the PCV port right here with a old Honda oil pressure sensor. So I just blocked that off with that. And I got to get a pipe plug for here. This is where the coolant comes out to the oil cooler. I got to plug that off. And then I got to plug this guy down here. And then put my water pipe on, the intake manifold, and the sandwich to run the oil line up to here, because the oil, when I had the head surfaced, I had the plug in the bottom of the head, the Allen head plug, to do LSV Tech. And they machined over the plug, so the plug is stuck in there. So that's not a big deal. I'll just run the oil line externally. So that should work out good. Yeah. Got alternators on, pans on. I told you about the pan gasket. That thing's awesome. The only other things is, yeah, what I told you. So I'll keep going on this thing tomorrow. Maybe I'll get it into the car tomorrow. We'll see what my schedule is like and all that. The weather is really shitty right now anyway, so it's not like we can really go beat on it. But I'd like to hear it run, see what kind of oil pressure it has. I got to get an oil pressure gauge too, because the fucking pressure gauge that I was running before was a pain in the dick, because the sensor was so big it was interfering with the catch can line right here. So I'm going to get like a mechanical gauge, I think, mechanical oil pressure. And yeah, I think that's it. Okay, so anyways, hopefully you learned something, or if you didn't, you're up to date now. I know a lot of you guys really like my videos, and you like listening to me fucking babble, so I'm babbling for you. Yeah, thanks for watching, and we will catch you in the next one. Have a great day, and a great tomorrow, and a better fucking see ya.